Bob. Remember our old friend Bob? Remember the torment of Bob. Look at Bob now, my friends. Good morning to you. Good Thursday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports, and this is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. The Panthers beat the Rangers 3-0 last night in New York. That was game one of the Eastern Conference Final. And my goodness, was that thorough. I'm talking the Rangers having only a dozen shots midway through the third period. It was just, I can recall one meaningful flurry that New York had, and it came with about 7 or 8 minutes left in regulation, and that was it. I don't think of Florida's roster as being defensively elite in any some way. I don't think of the Paul Maurice system, or for that matter, the general mindset of the Panthers players as being defense first. But nobody's lying when they say that they did this to the Rangers last night and they did it to the Bruins over pretty much a whole series just before that. Also, and relevant, they've got Bob. And I'd like to talk a little bit about Sergei Bobrovsky today, because Bob was a punchline and a half for Pittsburgh's hockey fans, and at least one Pittsburgh hockey writer, for many, many years, and deservedly so. Bob would do strange things. This was when he was young and in Philadelphia, and then as he was kind of growing into himself in Columbus. As soon as he would see the Penguins, as soon as he would see the uniforms, or, I don't know, Sid and Gino in the warm-ups or whatever, he just crumbled right in front of our eyes. I don't know that I can recall something similar in a lifetime of covering this beautiful sport. I don't know that I can recall one goaltender just seeing another team and going, the way Bob would. But he did, and it was unmistakable. What's more is when we would talk to him about it afterward, he would act like he didn't even know what we meant. He would take some kind of umbrage about, I don't know, big games or playoff games or whatever. No, Bob. We're just talking about Pittsburgh here. Just Pittsburgh. Because we'd ask him similar questions after regular season losses. It didn't matter. He'd give up these softies, these floaters, these 50-footers. And then he'd be playing somebody else and he'd look kind of like he does now. What happened to Bob? What happened? I don't know. I don't cover him. I don't cover the Panthers, and I've never covered the Blue Jackets or the Flyers either. But I do know that whatever it is that he overcame 100% of it, because he now plays like this even when he faces the Penguins. He's gotten rid of that stigma and all other stigmas. Now, he's 35 years old, and he's probably only performed at this rarefied level, and that's where he is. That's where he's been the past 2 years. Just really since, I don't even want to say getting to Florida, because you might remember that in last year's playoffs, he wasn't even the starter. They started with Alex Leon, remember? Bob came in to kind of bail them out, and then that was the end of old Bob. But here's what I do know. Goalies are strange. I'm not breaking any hot news here when I share this with people who press play on a podcast called Daily Shot of Penguins, because you're probably hopeless hockey lifers the way I am. And if you've ever encountered a goalie in real life, let alone played with them or coached them or reffed them even, you know that they're different, really different. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all your summer sports needs this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NHL, NBA playoffs. Get the latest odds and lines, including all team matchups, player props, odds on just about everything that's out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. And even just from a pure sporting standpoint, you don't know what it is that goes wrong when it goes wrong. Really intelligent, educated, on goaltending kind of people, like professional goaltending coaches, will give you a shrug and a tilt of the head more often than not when you ask them a question about their particular pupils. This, I can tell you, unequivocally is true of those who are employed by the Penguins. You don't know what happens with Tristan Jarry when it goes bad. You don't know what happens when it's going well. You don't know what pushes his buttons. You don't know what motivates him. And even with a guy who's so down to earth, so relatable, so conversational like Alex Nedeljkovic, you don't know because in large part, he doesn't know. Alex, I asked him at one point, this was in Newark, late in the season, when it's going like this, Alex, what are you feeling? He goes, I don't know. I'm just trying to make the next save. You know, my team needs me right now. I'm just trying to make the next save. Don't worry about the goal that went in. The most important save that you have to make is the next save. Really, Alex, that's all you got for me? But that's infinitely more than you'll get out of the other guy. Jarry he'll come across to you like a guy who is in denial after a bad game, and he'll tell you, boy, I really felt sharp. I was all over everything out there. And you're thinking, wait a second, I didn't attend this game. What are you even talking about? And you wonder if he's even processing anything. You wonder if it's making it through somewhere, that he realizes that he needed to do this or needed to do that. And the extreme example, obviously, where Jarry is concerned is the Islanders playoff series in which he passed the puck right up the rink. I don't need to go over that again. You know what I'm talking about. Josh Bailey and all that stuff. How was he going to bounce back from that? I know how. He was oblivious to it. He just blurred it out. I was there for it, asking him stuff in training camp, and you could tell, again, you would just get that shrug and tilted head look from him like, what are you even talking about? Who are these Islanders of whom you speak? So the one part that can, I guess, really be a controlled assessment, if you want to call it that, whether it's from a scouting perspective or a hockey executive perspective, is, all right, is the goaltender athletic enough? Do they have the size, the speed, and the skill to be able to make saves at the NHL level? Can they handle the stick? Can they control rebounds? There are all kinds of boxes that you need to check from that standpoint. But the brain stuff, you've got no idea. You've got no idea. Bob is 35, and he is playing like this is the absolute pinnacle of his career. You know why? Because it is. When we come back, J1Q. J1Q, and it's a good one, comes from Cody. He says, DK, I know this is probably beyond a long shot, but do you think there exists a situation in which the Penguins would consider a reunion with Jason Zooker? I would imagine the cap hit of his next prove-it deal will be a good less than his current $5.3 million, which, by the way, was over a one-year term with Arizona. If he's cheap enough, I think he'd be a great option for the third-line left wing. Brings energy, skates hard, physical, finishing skill. He'd mesh great with Lars Eller and be a dependable and talented winger for him. You know, Cody, you almost met the criteria of guaranteeing that your question gets asked by saying something somewhat nice about Eller. Want to hear something funny? A baseball fan who tried to get a J1Q answered about the Pirates began his question last night by saying Lars Eller is a great hockey player. I actually didn't use it. I mean, I don't even think the baseball fans would know what that means. There's not a whole lot of cross-pollination there. Zooker, fair thing to bring up. He's 32 years old. You just noted it was a one-year prove-it deal with the Coyotes for $5.3 million. He held up his end without having obviously been able to be around him all year as I've been in the past. He played games. He didn't miss hockey. He had 14 goals, 18 assists. In the playoffs, in the 6-game series that the Predators had, once he ended up moving to Nashville against the Canucks, he had a goal and 2 assists in 6 games. He also had 17 shots on goal. So typical Zooker, he elevates. He's more visible than usual in the playoffs, even though he's plenty visible in the regular season. And I say all that, and I nod my head throughout everything that I just read of your submission there. And I go at the end of it and think to myself, okay, but then you're adding another 32-year-old. And I've just spent the past several weeks criticizing Kyle Dubas for having brought in a bunch of 30-year-olds for the bottom 6 and not really doing anything to add to the team's general energy level. Now, you're right. Zooker does offer that energy. He was the one who was, to borrow Mike Sullivan's phrase, dragging us into the fight. Some nights, most nights, actually. But I don't know, man. This is why I keep coming back to wanting or even needing some sort of stark definition for what this team would like to get out of its bottom 6. Understanding and respecting that Eller is part of that. Eller can do it whichever way you want. That's one of the many beautiful things about that guy. If you want the third line to go offense, if you want it to contribute goals and assists, he'll do that. He won't complain. If you want it to be a shutdown thing, he'll do that. He'll make sure his wingers are on board. And again, he won't complain. The guy is looking for one outcome on any given night, and that's 2 points. That's it. But until you have some kind of feel for, all right, are you looking for offensive support out of the third line? You know, if that's the case, is that where you're going to stash Riley Smith, hoping that he becomes interested in playing for the Penguins at some point? Is that where you're going to try out, for lack of a better description, someone like Sam Poulin and say, listen, Sam's been in the minors too long. This has got to stop. At some stage of Sam's career, we're going to have to throw him into the NHL and see what he can offer. Or do you just say hell with all of it and we're just going to come up with nothing but Lars and 5 grinders and have Jonathan Gruden be flanking Eller over there? I don't know. What I do know is for the scenario that you're describing, Zooker would have to come really, really cheap, and you'd have to be moving other types of money, and you can't go long term. It would have to be a situation kind of similar to what led to him signing with the Coyotes, where there just weren't a whole lot of teams that were interested. They feared his injury status. They saw him sitting on that stool, whatever that thing was that everybody denied existed at the end of the bench. That was supposed to be something, from what we heard, to help him through a back issue or whatever. But then again, you mention it to everybody, and I don't even know what you're talking about. What stool? Mike Sullivan would say that. What stool? What are you talking about? We're all looking at it. He's sitting on a stool. So I don't know. As you can tell, I have mixed feelings on it. I appreciate the question, though. I appreciate everybody who listens to Daily Shot of Penguins. We're going to do another one of these tomorrow.